I imagine that right now you're feeling a bit like Alice. Tumbling down the rabbit hole?
A brief overview of biblical cosmology.
In the beginning God created the heaven and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. And God said, Let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters. And God made the firmament, and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament. And God said, Let the waters under the heaven be gathered together unto one place, and let the dry land appear. And God said, Let there be lights in the firmament of heaven to divide the day from the night. Firmament comes from the Hebrew word rakia, or the root word rakah, meaning to stretch, spread out, beat, or to tread out a solid expanse. The firmament of heaven, or in Hebrew, rakia shemahim. In Genesis 1:20, birds fly above the earth in the open firmament of heaven. There is a reason why the sky is blue, because of the waters above the firmament, and because the firmament itself, which is a massive structure made of blue crystal sapphire. What is the firmament? The solid dome that encloses our geocentric earth plane. In Exodus 24:10 there is a verse, and it says, And they saw the God of Israel, and under his feet there appeared to be a pavement of sapphire, as clear as the sky itself. Five witnesses to the fact that the moon is its own light source and not a reflection. First, Genesis 1:16, and God made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also. Second, Isaiah 13:10, For the stars of heaven and the constellations thereof shall not give their light. The sun shall be darkened in his going forth, and the moon shall not cause her light to shine. Third, Ezekiel 32:7, And when I put thee out, I will cover the heaven and make the stars thereof dark. I will cover the sun with a cloud, and the moon shall not give her light. Fourth, Matthew 24:29, Immediately after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light, and the stars shall fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens shall be shaken. Fifth, Mark 13:24, But in those days, after that tribulation, the sun shall be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light.
Old work truck, and it's out here in direct moonlight. And I'm going to take my infrared thermometer with laser targeting, and I'm going to get a temperature in direct moonlight. 39 degrees. Now we're going to go over here in the shade. On this side of the truck, the moonlight cannot hit it, and the temperature 47.6. It's over 8 degrees warmer in the shade. Do you understand what that means?
In Chronicles 16:30 we find, Tremble before him, all the earth, the world is firmly established, it cannot be moved.
If a telescope is pointing at a star, and both are stationary, then obviously the light comes straight into the telescope. In 1729, Bradley found that he had to tip his telescope forward very slightly to get a star in the centre of his telescope. It was assumed that this was due to the motion of the Earth around the Sun. Let us assume that the telescope was moving at 5 miles an hour and had to be tipped 5 degrees. This 5-degree tipping, however, could equally be caused by the ether moving at 5 miles an hour, carrying the stars around the Earth. As we see here, the light would be coming in at the same angle, and the telescope would still have to be tipped 5 degrees. So tipping the telescope does not tell us whether it is the starlight moving or the telescope moving. However, there is a simple experiment that can determine whether it was the Earth that was moving or the ether and starlight. All that you had to do was record the tipping required for any particular star, then fill the telescope with water, which greatly slows down the speed of light in the telescope. So here is the moving telescope filled with water, tipped at 5 degrees, and you can see that the starlight does not now reach the eyepiece at the bottom. This is because the starlight moves much more slowly when passing through water. However, if the telescope is tipped further, say 10 degrees, then the starlight will then be visible again in the eyepiece. It has to be tipped further because the light is now slower when in the telescope. But if the starlight is going past the telescope at 5 miles an hour, then when it is filled with water, no further tipping is needed because the light is coming in at 5 degrees anyway. The starlight stays on the same path but is only travelling slower in the water. To recap, if it is the telescope that is moving, then when it is filled with water, it has to be tipped further to see the star. If the telescope is stationary and the starlight drifting past us, then it does not have to be tipped further. In 1871, George Biddle Airy, the Astronomer Royal, performed this experiment. This is a copy from his original report. You can see that the two readings are virtually identical. If it had been the telescope that was moving, Airy expected a figure of 30 seconds of arc. In fact, he only managed to read 0.8 seconds of arc difference. Bradley first discovered stellar aberration, and it is interesting that in his report Airy mentions that it was now about 100 seconds of arc and that it was still slowly diminishing. This indicates that the speed of light was still decreasing in measurable amounts when Airy performed his experiment in 1871. The result of Airy's experiment, known as Airy's failure, was that the telescope does not have to be tipped further. This proved that it was the incoming light that was moving past a stationary telescope fixed to the stationary Earth. What is interesting in his very brief report of only 4 pages is that not once did he refer to the astonishing results that the experiment proved, that the Earth was stationary. This experiment was also dismissed by Wikipedia, which said, "Ether drag test," under the main article, Luminiferous Ether. By means of a water-filled telescope, Airy in 1871 looked for a change in stellar aberration through the refracting water due to an ether drag. Like in all other ether drift experiments, he obtained a negative result. This is a gross distortion of the truth. That he did not have to change the angle proved that it was the ether drifting past the stationary surface of the Earth.
That they were dreadful, and their rings were full of eyes round about them four. And when the living creatures went, the wheels went by them. And when the living creatures were lifted up from the earth, the wheels were lifted up. Whithersoever the Spirit was to go, they went. Thither was their spirit to go. And the wheels were lifted up over against them. For the spirit of the living creature was in the wheels.
But the second type of angel described in Ezekiel 1 is even more bizarre. Meet the Ophanim. According to Medium, Ophanim comes from the Hebrew word for wheels. It's a fitting name because Ezekiel's vision suggests that some of God's angels are actually floating eye-covered wheels that sparkle like jewels. Each appeared to be made like a wheel intersecting a wheel. Their rims were high and awesome, and all four rims were full of eyes all around.
Sonoluminescence.
The first time I saw sonoluminescence was in a darkened room. I was transfixed to look at this spherical flask of fluid. And you'd look into the center, and in the center see a glowing blue-purple light, which could be seen with the unaided eye. It looked like a star in the heavens.
Seth Putterman called it the star in a jar, a tiny spot of bright light contained in a flask of liquid. This star in a jar is made when a sound wave is passed through a small bubble inside a flask of liquid. And this sound wave makes the bubble do something remarkable. First it expands, then it collapses. And this collapse happens so violently that vapor molecules trapped inside the bubble slam together and heat up so much that the bubble gives off an incredible burst of heat and light, several thousand times a second, giving the appearance of a star. What made the phenomenon so exciting was the temperature of this star in a jar. On its surface alone, the light burns at tens of thousands of degrees. And Seth Putterman now contemplated a tantalizing possibility. Could the core of the collapsing bubble be even hotter? Hot enough for fusion?
One of the mysteries of sonoluminescence is to determine exactly how hot the interior of the bubble gets. In the sun, the interior can be millions of degrees, hot enough to cause fusion. And the thought crossed my mind that perhaps inside the collapsing bubble, the interior of the bubble might also get hot enough to cause fusion.
If so, this would be something truly amazing. By simply bombarding tiny bubbles with sound waves, temperatures of over 10 million degrees would be created. And nuclear fusion, the same reaction that powers the Sun, would be happening almost effortlessly here on Earth.
The North Star, also known as Polaris, appears to stay fixed in our northern sky. It marks the location of the sky's north celestial pole, the point around which the whole northern sky, full of stars, turns. That's why you can always use Polaris to find the direction north. Since the first mariners braved the open ocean, the North Star has served as a reliable beacon to guide them home, due to the fact it doesn't change its position in the sky for hundreds and thousands of years. Also, in the now infamous Georgia Guidestones, you can find a hole which will always allow Polaris to be seen through it, due to the nature of the Earth being stationary. And in the Book of Enoch, we see this verse, and it says, "And his light," referring to the sun, "is sevenfold brighter than that of the moon, but in regards to size, they are both equal."